any other data source. Let's say you need to click on new source option. Let's say yesterday we have seen how to extract the data from Excel workbook. Today we will see how to connect with the SQL Server database and all. Let's see first we will see once again how to connect with the Excel workbook. Then we will coming into how to connect with SQL Server. Okay, let's say first now just for initial understanding purpose, I'm connecting with the Excel. Just I'm extracting employee table just for seeing only. It is having just let's say observe in this employee Excel workbook, it is having three sheets. So that's why it is showing 3 sheets. Let's say in that 3 sheets, whatever the sheets we required, that sheets we need to select. Let's say these are these. Let's say whenever you are moving on cursor to that particular table, it will show that if it is empty tables, it will show that empty. If it is having information, then it will show that information. Based on the information, you need to select that particular tables. You need to select that particular tables. Let's say here we have loaded this table. Here we have loaded this table, and let's say now just I'm going to connect with SQL Server. Let's say how we can connect with the SQL Server, and we will see practical now. Okay, let's say interview point of view, it's a very important question. Is that, let's say, what are the connectivity modes we have in Power BI? What are the data connectivity modes in Power BI? It's a very important question on interview point of view. Let's say here, let's say now I'm connecting with the SQL Server. Okay, just simply I'm clicking on SQL Server. Let's say here it is showing 2 data connectivity modes. 2 data connectivity modes. One is that import, another one is that direct query. Let's say just I'm canceling this, and let's say I'm selecting on SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Services. SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Services. Whenever we are connecting with the SQL Server Analysis, again it will show that 2 options. One is that import, and another one is that connection live. It means to say totally we have 3 types of connectivity modes. Totally we have 3 types of connectivity modes on Power BI. Let's say in Power BI we have 3 types of connectivity modes. One is that import query, direct query, and connection live. Let's say first we will see what is the difference when we will go to import query, when we will go to direct query, and then we will see that. And let's say if we are working with import query, what it will happen. If we are working with the direct query, what it will happen. That we will see detailed point of view. Okay, so now simply I'm removing this table. So for deleting, simply I'm clicking on delete option. So click on delete. Okay, see now observe. Let's say in this new source option, let's say I'm clicking on SQL Server. I'm selecting SQL Server. Let's say here here it is asking server name. If we go to real time, this IT people will provide that server name. Let's say your project team will provide that KT session itself. They will say that this is the server you need to connect. From this server you need to extract the data. Like that in the KT session itself they will provide. If they haven't provided means, then you need to ask to them. Let's say from where the database is available, from which server I need to connect, that you need to ask to them. So in real time point of view, they will provide that server name. Let's say here initial perspective, I'm connecting with the my database. So my SQL Server. So I'm mentioning it as a dot. Why I'm mentioning that means that will indicate it as local server. Okay, so for that I'm mentioning it as dot. And here, if you know that database name, you can mention that database name. If you don't know that database name, you don't know that database name means, then you can leave it. It's an optional thing. Okay, if you haven't mentioned the database name means, then it will show that all the databases which will be available on that particular server. మీరు ఎప్పుడైతే డేటాబేస్ నేమ్ మెన్షన్ చేయలేదో, డేటాబేస్ నేమ్ మెన్షన్ చేయకపోతే ఏమవుతుందంటే మీకు డేటాబేస్ లో ఎన్ని సర్వర్ లో ఎన్ని డేటాబేసెస్ ఉంటే అన్ని డేటాబేసెస్ కూడా చూపిస్తుంది. ఓకే, అదే మీరు డేటాబేస్ నేమ్ అనేది మెన్షన్ చేస్తే ఇట్ విల్ షో దట్ ఓన్లీ పర్టికులర్ డేటాబేస్. లెట్స్ సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఐఎమ్ నాట్ మెన్షనింగ్ ద డేటాబేస్ నేమ్, సింప్లీ ఐఎమ్ క్లిక్ ఆన్ ఓకే. Simply I'm click on okay. See, in my database, in this local server database, it is having these many databases, these many sub databases it is having, these many sub databases it is having. So these many sub databases it is having, so it is showing that information. Let's say I'm simply canceling this and going back and click on new source, selecting SQL Server. Here I'm mentioning that, and I know one of the database name like a sales. Just I'm clicking okay. See, it will show that only that database which we want, only that database it will show to us. In that database, whatever the tables is available, that tables it will show to us. And in that database, whatever the views is available, that views also it will display to us. Views and tables. What is views and what is view and what is the table under, that we will see coming sessions. Okay, going forward, whenever we start that SQL Server, that time we will see that complete information. Let's say now here understanding purpose, I'm showing just a thing. Let's say see, observe. Let's say now what I'm doing means, let's say I'm extracting the data from SQL Server. Here I'm mentioning as a dot, and database name I know that, so I'm selecting that the database name as sales, and then connectivity modes. Let's say here it is having two types of connectivity modes. One is that import query and another one is that direct query. Direct query. Let's say import query means, let's say whenever it is having small amount of data sets, then we will go with import query. When we will have that large amount of data sets, then we will prefer this direct query. Let's say why? Because of, let's say if we are using import query means that complete data, whatever the data is available on database, complete data will load into our Power BI application. Let's say if we are working with the direct query means it will not load the data, it will load that metadata. Metadata means data about data. It means to say which is column headers information. It will occupy that memory for column headers information. Let's see how it will happen, what is the happen and all that we will see in detailed point of view. Now let's say here I have selected import query. Then I'm clicking okay. Okay. Let's say here it will show that all the tables. Let's say just I'm selecting which is related to sales. That tables I'm selecting. Only sales schema అనేది ఉంది కదా, సేల్స్ స్టార్ట్ అయ్యేది మాత్రమే లోడ్ చేసుకుంటున్నా. సేల్స్ తో స్టార్ట్ అయ్యేది మాత్రమే ఐఎమ్ లోడింగ్ ఇంటూ దట్ పవర్ BI. Now you can observe all the tables is loading into Power BI. All the tables I am loading into Power BI. Let's say once the tables has been loaded, I will not do anything. Just simply I will save this file. We will see how much memory it will occupy. Let's say simply I will extract that data from direct query mode also. How much memory that will also occupy, that we can verify. Let's say I'm doing simply save. Let's see when I'm doing save option, it is asking location. Simply I'm saving that import. File name also I'm providing import. Let's say here, let's say whenever you are saving this Power BI files, that Power BI extensions would be two things. One is that PBIX and another one is that PBIT. Let's say here it will show that PBIX and PBIT. Let's say initial days we will save that PBIX. PBIX is that Power BI report file and PBIT is that Power BI template file. Template file, what is the use of template file? And let's see that we will discuss on coming days. Okay, let's say now initial days perspective I'm saving with PBIX only. Then simply I'm clicking on save. Okay, see now what I'm doing means I'm closing this PBIX file. I'm closing this Power PBIX file, and let's say I'm opening another PBIX file. In that another PBIX file, I will import the data based on direct query mode. Let's say what it will happening, we will verify. Let's see, now I'm extracting the data from here from desktop. Let's say I'm clicking, simply mentioning that, and I'm mentioning sales database. From the sales database, I'm selecting direct query mode and click on OK. Now also I'm extracting same tables. Simply click on load. Simply click on load, and I'm saving this file. I'm not doing anything, but this also I'm implementing direct and save. Then I'm coming into Power BI desktop. Here you can observe, let's say import query, what is the file size, and direct query, what is the file size. Import query, what is the file size, Andy?
224 KB.
224 KB. Let's say for direct query, what is the file size?
36.6.
36. However, 36. Okay.
36.
Okay. Okay. Let's see which is occupying the more size and occupying the more space. Let's say in that import query and the direct query, we have loaded same tables or different tables. Same tables. But whenever we are working with import query, that complete data will load into our Power BI application. Data అనేది అప్లికేషన్ లకి లోడ్ అవుతుంది కాబట్టి మనకు ఎక్కువ మెమరీ అనేది ఆక్యుపై చేస్తుంది. Okay, next thing, let's say whenever we are working with this direct query, our Power BI reports, how many options it is showing? 3. What is that 3? First one is that report, second one is that data model. Let's say observe, this is import query. If you want to see that file name, then you can see here file name import. Okay, it's showing import only, right? Okay, so now what I'm doing means, let's say I'm going to direct query. Let's say in this direct query, how many options it is showing? 2. Whenever we are working with direct query, it won't show that data tab. Why? Because of we are not loading the data into PBIX files. It's here we are not loading the data into PBIX file. Data అనేది లోడ్ చేసుకోవడం లేదు. జస్ట్ డేటా అనేది ఇక్కడ మీకు డేటా అనేది లోడ్ చేసుకోకపోతే మీకు ఆపరేషన్స్ ఎలా చేస్తారు, క్యాల్కులేషన్స్ ఎలా చేస్తారు అంటే జస్ట్ డేటా అనేది వ్యూ అవుతుంది. వాట్ ఎవర్ ద డేటా ఈస్ అవైలబుల్ ఆన్ SQL సర్వర్, that data it will view. Let's say it will occupy memory for only headers. Headers means that is metadata. This we can call it as metadata. column names and column names and column structure of information, that we can call it as metadata. Application itself, it is having the data, so it will give that some good performance to us. In ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీలో అప్లికేషన్ లోనే డేటా అనేది స్టోర్ అవుతుంది కదా, చూసాం కదా. ఇప్పుడు మనం జస్ట్ ఊరికి సైజ్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూని అబ్జర్వ్ చేసాం కదా. సో అప్లికేషన్ లోనే స్టోర్ అవుతుంది కాబట్టి ఇన్ ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీ ఇఫ్ యూ డిడ్ ఎనీ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ క్యాల్కులేషన్, ఇట్ విల్ గివ్ దట్ ఫస్ట్ గుడ్ పర్ఫార్మెన్స్ టు us. Let's say if I coming to direct query, in direct query, if we did any kind of calculation, for each and every calculation, it will hit that database. Here in direct query, it is not having the data. So if we did any kind of calculation, let's say for example, I'm doing anything on this unit price into quantity. Let's say here the data, it's only viewing. Let's say data is not implementing here. Let's say those kind of scenarios, for each and every calculation, it will hitting the database. So if it is hitting the database and each and every time, means it will give that good performance or low performance. Slow ga untundi. By default its performance will be low. Slow. Automatic ga performance anedi degrade avutundi. Okay, let's say manaku ఒకసారి ఏదైనా ఆపరేషన్ చేయాలి, లెట్స్ సే ఏదైనా క్యాల్కులేషన్ చేయాలి అంటే, మీకు పవర్ బిఐ ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీలోకి వెళ్తే అప్లికేషన్ ఇట్ సెల్ఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ హ్యావింగ్ ద డేటా, సో ఇట్స్ ఈజీలీ ఇంప్లిమెంట్ దట్ ఆపరేషన్. లెట్స్ సే ఇఫ్ యూ గో టు డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ, అప్లికేషన్ విల్ నాట్ స్టోర్ ద డేటా, సో ఫర్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీ ఆపరేషన్ it will give that, it need to hit that database. So performance wise it will be slow. Performance wise అనేది చాలా స్లోగా ఉంటుంది, right? In this the direct query editor, direct power query editor, let's say it's all the options is enabled only, right? Okay, we can able to implement. Okay, let's say next thing is that let's say in this import query, whatever the data sources Power BI will support, all the data sources import query will support. Power BI, whatever the data sources will support, all the data sources import query will support. Import query అనేది అన్ని డేటాబేసెస్ ను సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. పవర్ బిఐ అప్లికేషన్ అనేది ఎన్ని డేటాబేసెస్ ను సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుందో అన్ని డేటాబేసెస్ ను సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. బట్ డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ విల్ సపోర్ట్ ఓన్లీ few data sources. Direct query will support only few data sources, that is relational databases, which is relational databases. Those databases only direct query will support. Direct query అనేది ఓన్లీ రిలేషనల్ డేటాబేసెస్ ను మాత్రమే సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. Let's say now no, it means to say which connectivity, based on which connectivity it's extracting the data. Import by default for Excel it will behave it as import mode ను బేస్ చేసుకుని డేటా అనేది లోడ్ అవుతుంది. Okay, if it is loading from direct query mode, means in Power BI desktop it will show that only two options, report and model. Let's say మనం నిన్న ఎక్సెల్ ఫైల్ తో ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసుకున్నప్పుడు ఎన్ని ఆప్షన్స్ చూపించినాయి మనకు? 3. ఇంపోర్ట్ డేటా మోడల్ అనే 3 ఆప్షన్స్ చూపిస్తున్నాయి. అంటే మీకు ఇంపోర్ట్ ఈ ఎక్సెల్ ఫైల్స్, ఫ్లాట్ ఫైల్స్ అనే దానికి డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ అనేది సపోర్ట్ చేయదు. బై డిఫాల్ట్ నేచర్ ఏంటంటే ఇంపోర్ట్. This direct query will support for only relational databases. Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL వీటికి మేజర్ గా మనము డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ అనేది యూజ్ చేస్తాము. బట్ ఎప్పుడైతే మనకు ఫ్లాట్ ఫైల్స్, ఎక్సెల్ ఫైల్స్ and a small amount of data sets ఉంటాయో, then we will prefer that import query mode. Import query అనేది ప్రిఫర్ చేస్తాము. Let's say that too, this import query will support whatever the DAX functions Power BI will support, all the DAX functions. Yesterday I have said one DAX అనేసి ఒక నేమ్ చెప్పాను. Let's say that DAX functions, complete DAX functions Power BI will support. Whatever the DAX functions Power BI will support, all the DAX functions import query will support. Let's say let's see, this import query will support whatever the DAX functions Power BI will support. All the DAX functions import query will support, but direct query will not support few of the DAX functions. A direct query will not support few of the DAX functions. So let's say which is related to time intelligence functions. You can verify. Let's say I'm taking time intelligent functions. Let's say in time intelligent functions, let's say I'm clicking any one of the function like dates by TD. I'm clicking. Let's say in that dates by TD, if you observe in Microsoft document itself, let's say read this point. This function is not support for use for direct query mode. Let's say report on import query with the pro license. Import query, if we have implemented report on import query with the pro license develop చేశామంటే pro license తో develop చేశామంటే we can schedule 8 times per day. ఈ రిపోర్ట్ ను రోజుకి 8 సార్లు మాత్రమే షెడ్యూల్ చేయగలం. 8 times per day. ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీ విత్ ప్రో వర్షన్ చేశామంటే ఓన్లీ 8 times per day 8 times మాత్రమే షెడ్యూల్ చేయగలం. లెట్స్ సే ఇఫ్ కమింగ్ టు దిస్ import query with the premium version, let's say we can schedule 48 times per day. Let's see, it means to say import query with the premium version we can schedule 48 times per day. 48 times per day per day కి మనం ఎన్నిసార్లు చేయగలం అంటే per day కి మనము 48 times షెడ్యూల్ చేయగలం. every half an hour once. ఓకే, మనకి షెడ్యూలింగ్ అనేది ఎవరీ 15 minutes అట్లా కావాలంటే పాసిబిలిటీ కాదు. మనకు ఓన్లీ హాఫ్ అన్ అవర్ వన్స్ మాత్రమే షెడ్యూల్ చేయగలము. We can schedule that application every 15 minutes once also we can schedule. There is no limitation for that. In direct query we can schedule every 15 minutes once also. In direct query we can schedule every 15 minutes once also. So there is no limitation with that. If it is pro version or premium version, it doesn't matter. If it is pro or premium, doesn't matter. Pro version or premium version, it doesn't matter. Okay, pro license or premium license doesn't matter. Let's say in this we can schedule every 15 minutes once. Every 15 minutes once also. Let's say it's the based on the end user requirement, we can schedule this report. మనకు 15 minutes once కావాలన్నా కూడా షెడ్యూల్ చేస్తాము. Okay, let's say next difference is that if it is import with a pro version, that application size would be application size, not database size. I'm saying అయితే ప్రీమియం అయితే that application size would be 10 GB వరకు సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. 10 GB వరకు సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. Let's say recent updated documents they has mentioned 100 GB. Let's say previously they has mentioned 10 GB. Let's మీకు పవర్ BI లో దీనికి సైజ్ లిమిట్ అనేది ఏమీ ఉండదు. మీకు ఎంత డేటా అనేది ఉంటే అంత డేటా కూడా లోడ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఓకే, జస్ట్ ఇక్కడ డేటా అనేది దీనికి ఎందుకు లిమిట్ లేదు అంటే మీకు ఇక్కడ డేటా అనేది లోడ్ అవ్వడం లేదు. ఓన్లీ మెటా డేటా మాత్రమే లోడ్ అవుతుంది. మెటా డేటా లోడ్ అయ్యేటప్పుడు అప్లికేషన్ అనేది పెద్ద సైజ్ అనేది ఆక్యుపై చేయదు కదండి. మెటా డేటా అనేది ఓన్లీ లోడ్ అయ్యేటప్పుడు సైజ్ అనేది ఎక్కువ ఆక్యుపై చేస్తుంది. if you have loaded 100 tables also, it will not occupy much memory.
Yes.
So for direct query there is no limitation with that.
Okay.
These are the differences between import query and direct query. Let's say small amount of data sets, then we can prefer this import query. Small amount of data sets ఉంటే import query అనేది ప్రిఫర్ చేస్తాము. ఎందుకంటే మనకు అప్లికేషన్ సైజ్ అనేది లిమిటేషన్ ఉంది కాబట్టి. Whenever it is having large amount of data sets, then we will prefer this direct query. Direct query. Let's say if we are working with import query means, let's say if we are working with the import query means, our Power BI desktop will show to us. Our Power BI desktop will show to us three options. Report, data, model. Report, data, model. Let's say if we are working with the direct query mode means, direct query mode means our Power BI desktop will show to us. Our Power BI desktop will show to us only two options. Only two options, that is report and model. Report and model. Report and model. Next point. Let's say if you are working with the direct query mode means, if you are working with import query mode means, application itself it will store that information. It will store that information. It will store that application itself, it will store that information. Let's say if you are working, it will store only metadata of the tables. 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 Next point. Next point. Import query will give good performance. Good performance. Why? Because of application itself, it is having the data. Next point on direct query. Let's say compared to import query, it will give that import query will support all the DAX functions. Which will Power BI support. 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 Power BI support. Let's say direct query will not support all the DAX functions. Direct query will support only few DAX functions. Direct query, like which is not supported means majorly time intelligent functions. Time intelligence DAX functions. Direct query will support only relational databases. Only relational databases. Next point is that size. Import query with pro అయితే application size would be ఎంత అండి?
1 GB.
1 GB. There is no limitation. Direct query లో limitation అనేది లేదు. And next one is that scheduling. Import pro అయితే
10 times.
8 times in a day.
Import pro అయితే 8 times per day. 8 times per day. 8 times per day. Import query with premium అయితే
48 times. 48 times per day.
48 times per day. ఓకే, ఈ పాయింట్స్ లో మీరు ఇంటర్వ్యూలో వాడిని 4 పాయింట్లు చెప్పినా కూడా చాలు. సే మీరు ఇక్కడ అబ్జర్వ్ చేశారంటే వన్ థింగ్ అబ్జర్వ్ చేశారంటే by default whenever we are connecting with the database it need to ask some username and password, right? If we are connecting with the SQL Server databases means relational databases means in real time it will ask that username and password, right?
Yes.
But while we are connecting with the SQL Server database, is it asked that username and password?
No.
మనం కనెక్ట్ అయ్యేటప్పుడు యూజర్ నేమ్ అండ్ పాస్వర్డ్ అడిగిందా అండి?
లేదు.
లేదు. Let's say why it haven't asked that చేస్తాను. ఓకే, let's see by default మీరు ఎప్పుడైనా కనెక్ట్ అయ్యేటప్పుడు బై డిఫాల్ట్ నేచర్ ఏముంటుందంటే మీరు ఫస్ట్ టైం కనెక్ట్ అయ్యేటప్పుడే ఆ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ అనేది ఈ డేటా సోర్స్ సెట్టింగ్స్ గ్లోబల్ పర్మిషన్స్ లో స్టోర్ అయిపోతాయి. ఫస్ట్ టైం కనెక్ట్ అయ్యేటప్పుడు whenever you are connecting with first time that database credentials it will store under data source settings global permissions. Let's say now I'm clearing this global permission. Global permissions. I'm removing that permissions. Let's say simply close. Now you can observe. Let's say I'm clicking with the new database. Again I'm thinking to connect with the database. Let's say here it is asking server name. So next I'm clicking OK. See it is asking Windows credentials, database credentials, Microsoft account credentials. ఏ credentials కావాలి, ఏ credentials ప్రొవైడ్ చేయాలి అనేది అడుగుతుందా? ఓకే, let's say local database credentials, Windows authentication. So I'm saying use my current credentials only. Let's say it's asking encryption support and just simply I'm clicking OK. So that time it will show that databases. So now I'm not extracting any table, but that will store that source information, that will store that credentials information. Let's say whenever you are working with real time, in case by mistake if you provided that wrong credentials, it won't able to connect. First you need to clear these permissions, then you need to connect with the database. మీరు ఇక్కడ పర్మిషన్స్ అనేది ఫస్ట్ క్లియర్ చేస్తేనే మళ్ళీ ఆ డేటాబేస్ తో మీరు కనెక్ట్ అవ్వగలరు. పర్మిషన్స్ క్లియర్ చేయకుండా ఉంటే మీరు రాంగ్ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ ఇచ్చినప్పటికీ కూడా దట్ రాంగ్ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ కూడా స్టోర్ చేసుకుంటుంది, గ్లోబల్ పర్మిషన్స్ తోనే స్టోర్ చేసుకుంటుంది. సో మీరు ఆ రాంగ్ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ తో మీరు నెక్స్ట్ టైం కనెక్ట్ అయ్యేటప్పుడల్లా ఇట్స్ సంథింగ్ ఎర్రర్ అనేది త్రో చేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. అట్లా లేకుండా మీరు కనెక్ట్ అవ్వాలి అంటే ఒకసారి రాంగ్ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ ఇచ్చినారు అంటే డేటా సోర్స్ సెట్టింగ్స్ లేక వచ్చి గ్లోబల్ పర్మిషన్స్ మీరు ఏదైతే డేటాబేస్ కనెక్ట్ అయి ఉంటారో ఆ డేటాబేస్ పర్మిషన్ అనేది క్లియర్ చేసుకొని మీరు అగైన్ కనెక్ట్ అయితే అప్పుడు సక్సెస్ఫుల్ గా లాగిన్ అవుతుంది. ఓకే, Let's see, we will go with the detailed point of view tomorrow class and the data source settings option.
Okay.
Data source settings, let's say